Right, and we're live. Good evening, everyone, and a very happy Mother's Day to all those amazing mothers, role models, and non mothers who have been no less of a mother to someone out there. I am Sauravi Datta Roy, project lead for the Stories of India Season 3, and on a day dedicated to all mothers, I welcome you all to the 14th episode titled The Oldest Love Story, a Motherhood Anthology book launch. Stories of India is brought to you by www.tellmeyourstory.biz, a paperless media that works towards popularizing stories from academic research and social significance in collaboration with global thought leaders. Registrations are now open for the writing program season 6, the last date for registration being May 15, 2022. To know more, please visit www.tellmeyourstory.biz. Today we have with us Mr. Shantanu Ray Chaudhury, who will be in conversation with Ms. Rinki Roy Bhattacharya, Ms. Deepa Galot, Ms. Sita Bhaskar, and Ms. Maithili Rao. I will now briefly introduce each of them. Uh, Rinki Roy Bhattacharya was born with cinema in her veins. Her father was the celebrated author Vimal Roy, entirely self-taught, managing family life while assisting her husband Basu Bhattacharya at work. She learned journalism hands-on. For over 5 decades, she contributed prolifically to the Indian Express, the Times of India, Filmfare, Telegraph, and Hindu. Most Indian print media carried her byline on art, cinema, and cultural features. She has also edited books on her father's cinema and women's issues. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Um, Deepa Galot is a widely read film and theatre critic, noted columnist, editor, and blogger. Author of 5 books, she has also won the National Award for Best Film Criticism and runs the website deepagalot.com. We welcome you, ma'am.
Hi, thank you.
Sita Bhaskar is the author of 2 books, namely Flirting with Trouble and Shielding Her Modesty. Her short story, Swamvaram, which appeared in Crab Orchid Review, was listed among 100 other distinguished stories of 2007 in Best American Short Stories for 2008. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Maithili Rao drifted into writing on cinema after a stint as lecturer of English. She is the author of Smita Patil, A Brief Incandescence, and the forthcoming Millennial Women in Bollywood, A New Brand. She has written for national and international publications and contributed chapters to many books, including Encyclopedia of Hindi Cinema, Stardom in Contemporary Hindi Cinema, The Man Who Spoke in Pictures, and Madhumati. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Shantanu Ray Chaudhury, who launched the Cinema, Music and Culture list in Indian publishing for HarperCollins Publishers India, almost exclusively building some recognized names in cinema writing, as also working out co-pub arrangements. He also initiated a joint cinema imprint with Mami. In 2017, he was named Editor of the Year by the Apex publishing body, Publishing Next. He has written for Anupama Chopra's online magazine, Film Companion, and is a consultant, writer, and editor for the film website cinemazy.com. He's also a published author with 2 books to his credit, Whims, a book of poems, and Icons from Bollywood. He's currently the editor in chief with Om Books. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Mr. Chaudhary to take it over from here.
Thank you so much, Sauravi, and it's really lovely to have TMOI as a partner us with this. Coral, thanks so much for making this happen, and like very grateful for this evening today. First of all, Rinki and Maithili, really thank you for trusting me with this book. I know we have been talking about it for the longest time. In fact, even at the time I was at Penguin, and the world has since then turned topsy turvy with everything. But somewhere, like if it's destined to happen, it's destined to happen. I'm very happy this I got to publish this. Thank you so much for doing this with Om and with me, and thank you all the contributors. There are quite a few of us. Deepa and Sita are already here, and there are others. Asha, Rupa, all of them message asking for the link on Facebook and YouTube to join. So I hope they'll be also watching. There are quite a few others who have been writing. So thank you so much. Uh, Somewhere during the discussion, we'll keep this open, sort of interactive without getting sort of bogged down by one person talking at a time. So just feel free to come in with a thought that. During the conversation, we'll also have a brief. I'll tell Koral and Saurabhi to sort of play the video that we have of Chitra narrating her part of her essay. So to begin with, Maithili, I'll come to you first. For a this is quite a different sort of anthology. When you talk motherhood, we kind of tend to like today. In fact, one of the tweets that I responded to actually said, Uh, the supreme test of a woman is motherhood or something like that, and this was a woman tweeting actually. So I said, come on, really, there's something wrong if we think of a woman just in terms of motherhood. So will so this anthology, though we're publishing on it's called the Motherhood Anthology, we're publishing it on Mother's Day, but it takes into consideration a whole range of views on on the theme of motherhood. So it's not all uh, roses. There are guns also in there, somewhere. So let's talk about it, Maithili. To start with, why the oldest love story? That's a question that I've been thinking of asking. But why the oldest love story?
You asked the
Why?
wrong person. The title came up. Rinki came up with the title. We were struggling with what do we call this? Something to do birthing, and I think she had a thing from Mahashweta Devi's one short story. She was
Yes.
thinking changing that to something. I said no. Everything looks little contrived, and what do we do? So,
So
because she had already done a collection of motherhood stories earlier, parts of which essays are in this anthology too. Then
Yeah.
actually credit Rinki with the title and also the lovely cover photograph.
yeah,
That's her
Rinki,
biggest contribution to the, along with
Rinki,
other
how,
things, of
how, how
course.
did you think of a love story and the oldest love story? What was the process that sort of made you come up with this as a title?
Can I add to that, Shantanu?
Yes, yes, please, please.
See, I I tend to think that whatever a woman is, I mean, for her, the love for the child is, I think, I mean, I can call it oldest, but that is supreme in her life. She loves her child more than anyone else, anything else. And from that, sentiment is where, I got this. And it was a working title. I thought maybe we'll change it, but, it's stuck on. And I think I'm glad it's stuck on. And I mean, one can, make observations about it. I don't know how Sita feels about it, how Deepa feels about it. But that's where it came from. I mean, being a mother, I myself, I mean, no matter what your child is, I mean, you tend to love your child more than anything else. That's what I feel. Whether you
Rinki,
agree or
one of
not.
the things that I wanted to ask you was, in your preface to the book, you actually mentioned the empty nest syndrome that
Yes.
takes over. Like how was that an influence in putting this anthology together? Like if that had a bearing on the.
Actually, Shantanu, that's what drove me to the first book, Janani, from this whole feeling of emptiness and being unwanted, being redundant. I've written about that in my preface. Truly, that was what drove me to this. I felt completely like Maithili loved this line. I felt like what was the line, Maithili, if you remember?
Like a cord hanging when the orchestra packed up or
Yes,
something like that. Yeah.
yes, yeah. Literally, so I was going through a huge trauma. Suddenly I discovered the children are not there anymore. They've just left, up and gone. They're of course busy with the schooling, college, this, that, girlfriends, boyfriends, and it came really as a shock. And then it made me very curious to find out if women of my age or some of my contemporaries who were not just not just mothers. They were eminent writers. I mean, like Kamala Das, for example. She was the first one I turned to. I wrote, and within 5 days, I got a lovely piece which we have carried in this. And I think she puts it in a nutshell. Kamala's piece is a marvelous piece. It's very short, but it really puts that whole thing of emptiness when a child has grown up. Her last line is extremely, I would say, poignant. So we have pieces like that. Uh,
Yeah.
and many of our essays here are from the old collection, like Deepa's, for example, MAITHILI's, for example. Sita is a new voice. And it's, I think it's a wonderful book. I'm very happy that we wrote it. And I think it's going to strike a note uh, with a lot of people, not just women, but also with daughters, sons, hopefully with men. So let's hope we carry on.
Maithili, like one of the things, I'll just, after you answer this, we'll just hold up the book for a sort of token
Okay.
release sort of thing. But just to get an idea of what sort of uh, the process of getting the essays, as Rinki mentioned, some of these are but what was the process that drove you from, from something like Deepas to something like Ashas or Rupas, so what kind of uh, thought process went into the selection?
We did. We mulled over the old one. We said some are really like, they don't date. They remain valid even today as when the first time they were written. Like Sashi Deshpande's overview of motherhood. She is very, very honest that it sometimes if you make motherhood the center of your life, it devours you. So that was something that we carried as the first piece. I said that sets the tone for the rest of, because we didn't want all cloying, sentimental outpourings in the book. We wanted to see, because motherhood builds with it. I know you also feel a sense of burden. Burden, not in the, it's a happy burden, but then there's such a sense of responsibility that you brought this child into the world. You're responsible for her happiness all through your life, happiness or whatever. And you also learn to let go. That has been my philosophy, that you bring a child into the world, do the best you can, but then let them make their own lives. And I have only one child, and I've always told her that you're not bound to remain in India because you're an only child. Go ahead and do what you want in your life. We are there to support you. I mean, that is something that a certain sense of detachment from being a mother the whole time. I feel that, I mean, we wanted to bring voices that say that motherhood is not everything. It is a very important, and once you are a mother, you are a mother for life. It's not that it's going to change anytime. But I feel that new attitudes of motherhood being a choice, and not just being like, just you get married, you have a child. Whether, I don't know whether the woman is ready for it or not ready for it. Families, thrust the decision in a traditional setup of an arranged marriage. Acha bacha ka baar aaye. Yes, especially if it's the daughter of the daughter-in-law. So these are the kind of attitudes that wanted to, somewhere in the subtext at least, negate. So we said, let's get new, more contemporary voice. Deepa wrote then, but her voice remains contemporary even now. And unfortunately, we couldn't get many men to write because we had so many stories. And in the meantime, in Mysore, I discovered Sita. She's a wonderful writer. And I said, and she too is a mother. So I said, will you write? And hers is the only fiction piece that she's written. She'll talk about it later. But then I found that again, there is the whole thing. You're invested so much in a child emotionally, and it takes over your whole life. Is it really that healthy for a woman? I mean, that's my questioning. That for me, whatever your age, whatever vocation, whether you're a working woman or you have consuming hobbies, you have to make a separate life for yourself apart from being a mother. I mean, that's what I believe. And that is some of the things that we wanted to get into the anthology. I wonder whether we succeeded, because actually there are only few or 5 or 6 about being a mother. Rest of them all are about their mothers. But then women have looked at their mothers in a from both with affection as well as a certain kind of a objectivity. I think that's what lends sort of solidity to our book, the perspective. And even I rework my old piece. When Rinki asked me to write for Janani, I just dashed it off in about 4 or 5 days. But this time I mulled over it and I went into our family history and all that, and then saw my mother anew again, what kind of a woman she was. It was like a rethinking process and reassessment for me also. So I think, unfortunately, we couldn't get more sons writing about their
Yeah,
mothers. But
we'll come to
he
that. We'll
has,
come to that aspect a
yeah,
little later. Like
yeah,
why men are absent, in the sense of, like, of course, the daughters writing about their mothers makes a wonderful collection here. Like it's like it gives a whole different perspective on the aspect of motherhood. Like,
yeah,
and they are being very critical at times. They are being very critical of their mothers, leaving everything else to to be a mother. So there are essays that address that very, so I'll just, before we sort of release, I'll just, you mentioned Shashi Deshpande's piece, and like, so you also quote it in your introduction to the book, and I'll just read that out for for people who have joined in, so to give you an idea of the kind of approach that this anthology takes, and then we'll hold up the book to sort of formally release it, sort of thing. So Shashi Deshpande says, I have seen the fearful things that happen to a woman who is nothing but a mother. Motherhood becomes a monster that devours both her and her young, or when the children go away, there is an emptiness which is filled with frustration and despair. So that is the sort of lens through which this anthology, the essays in this anthology, look at motherhood. And so, if we could just hold this up on our screens for everybody to have a look, so this is the book, and we'll have a formal store release on 2nd of June in Bombay, Tidal Waves. But thank you so much again, Rinki and Maithili, for doing this with us. And so I'll come to Sita now. You know, before Maithili actually mentioned that this is the only fiction piece in the thing. While reading it, it sort of, and of course, it comes from a true story, as I discovered. But what was it like? It is a shattering story. It just feels like a true story. It doesn't feel like I'm reading fiction. I sort of, when I first read it and I didn't realize it was fiction, I sort of was stunned at what Sita Bhaskar might have gone through in going through this experience. Could you sort of talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, when Rinki and Maithili approached me to write a piece, I told them that I'm a fiction writer. I don't write essays, and I said I have this story. Take a look if it fits in, but please mention it's fiction. And both of them came back and said they wanted to include it. And I think that has to do with what I would like to say, and I'm using this platform to say this to everyone here is that it's not just motherhood, it's parenthood, because in my story the father also plays a very supportive role. And our children don't slide out of our wombs waving an instruction manual. No one deliberately sets out to raise a difficult child. And most often, as parents, we're winging it. We have no idea and we're just winging it. And so we raise them embedded in our lives, the lives that we lead, living with our value systems and our sense of right and wrong. And then you expect that to permeate into their psyche. finally, when they leave the house, you wrap that, though your values, around them like a cloak, and you send them out into the world. But then now we forget that there's a whole wide world outside that is also raising them once you send them out. Back in our day, we had neighborhood friends, we had some school friends, and we had some friends of friends. Whereas, who could influence us. But nowadays, these friends of friends is the entire digital world. With a click of a button, you can expose yourself to the entire world, and everyone will jump into the bandwagon either for or against you, and you will see that in the story that I've written. And what happens is the entire world is in your living room digitally all the time. That's what parents, and this is where parenthood is challenged these days. When you see your child, when you hear or see your child behaving sexist or racist or homophobic, you kind of stumble backwards because you think, where did he learn this? Surely not in my house. And so when your child goes off the beaten path into the digital world, you, as the parent, have to wade through all that muck, digital muck, and first find your child in that digital swamp, you know. Then you have to suck your child out of that swamp, bring him home, scrape, and I say him, her, it's all the same. I raised two boys, so I tend to say him. Uh, Try to scrape off all those layers from them to find your values beneath all that. And you do all this these days when you're the kind of parent who is social media challenged. You're the kind who will click on anything that anyone sends you because you're so trusting. And then you also say, it said download, and so I clicked and I downloaded it. I don't know what it is, I don't know where it is. And this very same child becomes your teacher to help you figure that out. And when somebody talks of the dark web, you think, well, why doesn't someone just switch on the light if it's dark? Because you have no idea what the dark web is. And then you're expected to rescue your child from this digital world when that same child is running circles around you. That is the challenge of parenthood that we go through, and it comes across in my book. But we mothers take it on ourselves. We say, what did I do wrong? Why is this kid behaving like this? And we turn around and blame ourselves for it. So I think that is the message I was trying to get across, that all of us understand, for all parents today, not just mothers, all parents today, we all understand what you're going through. But there are some of us, if my sons will say, I'm not giving you a second. What's the answer to this? Will you go back and do this thing over again? That is having kids. And I say, in a heartbeat, I would go back and do this again with the two of you. So, strange, but that's parenthood and motherhood. And you will
Thank you.
find all these in my story.
Yeah, thank you, Sita. We'll come back to some of these issues that you articulated here. Uh, one of the things that I really loved about the book, and I'll come to and I'll talk about that, is the way you have structured it. There is a section called outliers. Maithili, Rinki, you have put, and one of the most startling pieces in that section, it's for a change for a start, it's called outliers, and then you have Deepa's piece, and that has as an epigraph, it has Alvin Toffler, a quote from Alvin Toffler, which says, parenthood remains the greatest single preserve of the amateur. Deepa, yours is probably the most uh, like different essay. Like every other essay has something about the glories of motherhood in some sense or the other, but you sort of begin with and stay on course, saying that okay, this is not what it is made out to be, and I have no place for it. Can you come, it's such a refreshing thing to hear somebody say. Can you please come in on your essay and thoughts about this whole aspect of glorifying motherhood and your take on it?
Strangely enough, just a few days before, I was having a conversation with a neighbor who was having some child trouble with her children. Neither of whom wanted to live with them, with the parents. And in India, you know how it is. Parents expect their children to be around. And she said, "You don't know how lucky you are. तुझे पता नहीं तू कितनी सुखी है that you don't have to go through this problem." And I realized that a lot of the fiction that we see, and I'm talking of India in particular, a lot of films that we see always seem to focus on the sacrifices of the mother, the burden of the mother, the blame she has to go through if the child does something wrong, or the child avenging, society if something goes wrong with the thing. And I said, where is the joy of motherhood? Why doesn't someone talk of the joy? And the only joy part of it you see is when the child is an infant. After that, it seems like it's a series of suffering, of guilt, of burden, and I'm saying, why is this being sold to us as something to aspire to? And I gave it a great deal of thought in my own life, and I felt that, again, speaking from an urban middle class point of view, I didn't see the point in having a child. One is because it's difficult, it's expensive, and like today's world, there's no great payoff at the end of it. So of course, it might sound selfish. Oh, you expect something from the child? No, you don't expect something from the child, but you expect something. Not from the child. You expect something spiritually, emotionally, in somehow, for that to be changing you in a good way. And I don't see that happening to women around me. And I'm not, like, again, I'm talking of middle class, educated career women. It doesn't seem like it's something they would want to go through if they had a choice. And the reasons why women today are having, and I'm talking again of today. In the past, of course, it was inevitable. You got married, you had children. Who didn't have children, you had to face all kinds of social trauma. But if you have a choice today and give it a thought, it doesn't make sense to have children, because the reasons why women are having children, and I've said that in my piece also, don't apply. You don't need sons to cremate you, and you don't need a son to carry on the family name. And everyone someone says कि वो मेरा वारिस है, अरे जरा तुम हो कौन कि you need a वारिस? What? How does it matter to the world of universe at large if your name doesn't fall? What does it matter? You're not some again I'm saying a brick industrialist, something that whom it matters. For most people, it doesn't matter if your line ends with you. It doesn't matter. And most mothers, at least in the past, because they were not able to fulfill their own ambitions, used to live their ambitions through their child, and you put the burden of their ambitions on their child, particularly sons. And today, if you can fulfill your own ambition, why should you want to live through somebody else? So unless you have this very, very strong maternal instinct, unless you have this very, very strong desire to hear, the pitter patter of tiny feet, and like I said, from what I can see from experience of other people and from fictional world, is that the joy remains only till the pitter patter remains. After that, it's a series of sacrifices. So it doesn't make sense today for someone to have. And like I said, I've lived more than half my life now, and not for a minute have I regretted it. On the other hand, a lot of women who earlier, like 10 years earlier, would tell me, "Arey, why don't you get married? Why don't you have children? Why don't you adopt a child?" Today turn around and tell me how you don't know how lucky you are.
You begin your essay with your close friends asking you why don't you adopt, and then of course you
Yeah.
go on to say that kids take naturally to you, little children, they take naturally to you. So there is something out there that doesn't need you to be a mother to have kids taking to you. You don't need to adopt a child. Could you sort of talk about that, like not doing with adoption and all of that?
No, but I think because we take motherhood as something which is which shows that sacrificing or whatever is a woman's prerogative. That if you're a mother, it's your primary more focus in life to sacrifice everything for your child. Nobody says that to a father. A father can just abandon his children and go off, and nobody will say, "Yeah, what kind of father does that?" They will turn around and say, "Oh, what kind? The mother must have done something wrong that the husband left her." But if a mother leaves a child and goes away, the whole world will go, "Hi, hi, what kind of mother is she? She abandoned her child." So we equate love and sacrifice and compassion, and we see all the motherhood messages today, and motherhood ads today. All motherhood is sacrifice, motherhood is compassion. By doing that, you're saying that men can get away with it. That men don't have to be loving, men don't have to be compassionate, men don't have to be sacrificing. So men can go out to war and destroy another country. It's a woman's job then to make things right. I mean, what kind of logic is that? And in today's world, it doesn't apply.
Rinki, one question to you before we play Chitra's video. Koral will play Chitra's video after Rinki responds to this. One of the most fascinating pieces here is Manu Bhandari's. Sort of, can you give us an idea? Can you tell us how you discovered the piece and like, talk a little bit about that particular piece so that our listeners can get an idea. It's a traumatic piece, but
Yes.
it's brilliantly done.
Yeah. Manuji, I've known for many years as a writer, and this particular piece, came to me through a friend, Sudha, who's very, very close to who's one of our writers, Sudha Arora. So she put me on to Manuji, daughter. And it seems that Manuji always wanted to write about her mother, but she never managed to do that for a long time. And then she was, something turned in her and she wrote this piece. I think it is not just traumatic. I mean, it's an epic. That whole piece is so brilliant. It's like, I mean, I see cinema in that. It's so
It's visual.
cinema.
It's so visual. It's so
So
visual. You
visual,
can.
so visual. And then, I sort of chanced on the name also. The girl on the stairs. I mean, can you believe that on suspicion, a little girl who's married is supposed to be sitting on the chair, on the stairs, and not mixed with anybody? The kind of trauma that woman went through was absolutely unheard of, extraordinary, and I loved the piece, and I loved translating it. It was really a great joy to even translate that piece, and I could feel her trauma,
I
and
would.
also like true to Manuji, the way she emerges out of it in the end. Even her last words about her mother, so compassionate yet critical. I mean, she's not without criticism about talking about her mother, the way her mother spent. She didn't believe in that herself, but she never let go of her compassion about the woman. It's absolutely fantastic piece. It's truly one of the masterpieces, I think.
Thank you, Rinki. Koral, can we have the video play now? Chitra's video of this.
When I look back at my life of more than 7 decades, hoping to get new perspectives to understand it better, I see phases that are so distinct from each other. My childhood seems like an animation film. A young girl merrily skips through a world painted in bright colors, excelling in everything from performing arts to sports, topping her class in every subject, and taking success for granted. Yet, she's utterly naive and believes that this world, lovingly watched over by her mother, is unchangeable. My adult years are like a quirky, surrealist film in which too many things happen simultaneously. Major health issues to love marriage, a brief career in economics to motherhood, acting in experimental theater to suddenly becoming a star wife, crisscross each other, making life unpredictable, scary, yet exciting and exhilarating. Through success or failure, my mother's support is the only constant in this mostly self created, chaotic world. I recollect how, in the midst of this tumult, I stumbled into filmmaking and, despite its risks, frustrations, and tensions, said, "This is it." I also remember that I had never dreamt of being a screenwriter and began writing only because no one else took my ideas seriously. Ironically, besides theatre acting, it's screenwriting that I have enjoyed the most. Today, my years are in autumnal hues, harmonious, peaceful. Even now, I habitually dive into diverse activities. Besides having realized the old dreams of being a film director and world traveler, I write articles, work as a founder member of Swikar, the parent support group for the LGBTQIA community, and through various platforms, advocate for equal rights. I enjoy each activity, constantly learning new things, gathering fresh experiences. My mother is no more, but the infinite love and constant support of my daughter, sisters, and their families are the eternal source of my energy and joy in life.
Thank you, Coral. Maithili,
Yeah.
what?
Because I wanted self portraits following each essay. So, because each essay is so personal. So instead of giving uh, you know, uh, like a very dry summing up of their work and all that, I said, why don't you write a self portrait of each one has been a revelation and a surprise. And what I found was that the two film related people who wrote in the book, Shabana and Chitra, they both wrote it in a very different, like as if their life is a film. So I found that interesting, that take. And Chitra said that she was going to read from her book, and then I said, okay, you read because this can, excerpt it away from the rest of the essay, because some of the essays are so organically written that you can't excerpt a small piece from it and then do justice to the rest of the whole thing. So I said, I thought this was like a sample of the kind of self portraits that are there in the book. I think they are very interesting for me. I
Yes,
thought
yes.
that was
They offer a perspective to the essay that's preceded
yeah.
the self portrait. And we are actually getting a lot of comments also. I see on the screen. Uh, Mathli, like coming to your personal, that of course, with Shabana and Chitra, the other film personality there is Saeed Akhtar Mirza, and even Saeed Saab's essay excerpted from his book is very very visual. There's almost a sort of cinematic quality to the
Yes.
whole narration that he takes us through, the life of his mother and all of that. So let me just come to two pieces which I kind of thought were sort of mirrors to each other. One is your own piece, An Intermediate Life, and the other is When Alamelu Shrugged, C.S. Lakshmi's. Sort of, for some reason, like, if you could, you'll probably be able to enlighten me why I found them mirroring each other in a way. So could you please talk about your own experiences and how this essay came to be, and CS Lakshmi's, how that contrasts, like.
Actually, C.S. Lakshmi's is a very, very positive and cheerful, and it's full of a sense of fun in that. And it's
Yes.
very full of the life in Madras, life in Bangalore, and that mother who shrugged away all the problems. And that is her personality. That's why when Alamelu Shrugged, comes across as like a short story for me. It's like more like a incidents in a very interesting life of a woman who didn't let anything stop her from doing what she could to all her children, help them, and then she was also stubborn in many ways. I remember one place she says she wouldn't take their calls, and because if she was watching her favorite Tamil serial, and then she would, or if she didn't like any of the talk that is going around her, she would just take off her earpiece, as she hearing aid. I found that it is full of these amusing tidbits, at the same time the portrait of a very strong woman. But my story, the story about my mother, is about a 17-year-old girl marrying a man 16 years older with 3 children voluntarily. And she came from a different background. I mean, and then a lot of insecurities I could see in her life because she tried to be she wanted to prove that you could be the best mother you can be to a stepchildren. She wanted to take out the stigma around the word step. And I think she succeeded mostly. And I felt that very consciously she didn't show obviously her affection for her biological children, that is my younger brother and I. So I used to wonder, doesn't she love us very much? I mean, I came to know only when I was about 8 years old that my siblings, older siblings, were not her biological children, but they were my father's children from a first wife. So, so there was all this thing and churning going on in my own mind. Said, why did she do that? Why did she marry this man so much older? And so I discovered layer by layer, and that, but finally, her devotion to my father was betrayed because within a year after her dying, he married again to a person not really who could be, whom we could appreciate because she wasn't even more than just barely literate. And my father was a scientist. And I used to wonder what was there in common between them. So we were very disillusioned, all her children. I mean, my half brothers and sister. And my sister was wonderful. And I found one thing that is there in my generation growing up in a more conservative society like Hyderabad of that time, you had so many other mother figures in your life, not just your mother. My sister, older sister, was like a surrogate mother to us. And I had a widowed aunt who used to live with us. And I found that even my aunt, that is my mama's wife, she, when my mother died, she says, "You are like my oldest daughter. Don't feel that you have no mother." So these were the kind of influences that went on to tell me that you can get mothering from other people than your own biological mother. And for me, somehow it clarified a lot of things in my own mind when I look back at my mother's life. And it is a little sad, but at the same time she was contented with her life. But we all felt the betrayal by my father, but we had to accept it as it is. Sometimes you can't disown your parents. You can't ever disown your parents. That was something like a bittersweet kind of a thing where process when I was writing this through. But actually, I find that there is more common between Vaidehi's story and my story. Her mother came to a very traditional family as a young bride with grown up stepchildren. And then she says, her writing is so influenced by her mother, who was not, she didn't go beyond elementary school, but she had this whole throng of people in that small town in the backyard, from milkmen and one who brings hay for the cows, and people who are oil sellers, people coming for the fair and stopping by there to have a little nimbu pani or buttermilk. And she found an insight into the life of the ordinary people over there. And she says that has influenced her writing and the dialect of Kannada that her mother used to speak. So, for me, Vaidehi was a discovery that I made and then I'm really very happy to say we have 4 Sahitya Academy Award winners in our collection. There is
Yeah.
Sashi
Shashi Dev.
Deshpande, then there is Navneeta Devsen, and you have C.S. Lakshmi is the latest of Academy Award winners, and Vaidehi is a Sahitya Academy Award winner. So it's
Yeah.
just by chance, but we really feel proud that we have these writers in.
In fact, Vaidehi's poem, also My Mother's Sari, is very redolent of some of the feelings, particularly daughters have. In fact, my wife
Yes.
Panchali just was going through this, and the first thing she stopped at was at this particular poem and said, it brought back memories we still sort of go back to our mother's sari and smell it and find a whole world of memories opening up. So that's the kind of uh, feeling that some of these essays evoke. Rinki, one of the things that has sort of been I've been asking myself is, how come, apart from the preface, you haven't talked about either your mother or the aspect of motherhood, of being a mother? Why was that missing in this anthology?
I have to confess, Maithili and me, we debated a lot, and she tried to encourage me to write about my mother. She was an iconic figure. She's, in one of India's earliest women photographers. Uh, she's brilliant and also, a fantastic woman. She was also aspiring writer. I tried to write, but I just somehow just couldn't, there's something which was coming in the way of my, it wasn't sounding spontaneous, it was very contrived. So I gave up after a while. I just gave up. And as a mother, yes, as a mother of three children, I think I was happy editing others' works rather than put in my own little piece about me being a mother. I think it's all there. I mean, I see, I one piece which really I love is Shashi's piece, which was from the earliest this thing. I completely entirely agree with that. That whole body of work, her questioning about what it is to be a mother and a critical, investigation about the motherhood. Really compelled me to think that that's probably one of the things which we should think when we read about the book. And I am very much in favor of us women doing something else than being a mother. That those are my closing lines in my that
Yeah.
I'm happy to be myself. Yeah, rather than be a mother or a daughter, I think I'm happy to be myself. That's what my current feelings are.
given
But
given
it's
that the
a fantastic book. I mean, I
given that
can't.
the book is, I'm sure the book will go into reprint sometime soon. It's getting a lot of thing, and maybe in the reprint we can add an essay by you on, on your mother. I think it, give yourself that time till the
Yes, yes, yeah.
book
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
into.
I will try my best. But Shantanu, I also hope, rather than being just a reprint, I think many of the stories inspire filmmakers. Could
Yes,
inspire
yes.
filmmakers. Particularly, I think Manuji's piece. It's a film by itself. So many. I see the potential of cinema, and it's quite a few of them. Yeah. So maybe we should be prepared for film rights of some of these stories, sagas.
One question that I'll put to all of you, one by one, and then we sort of open this up to, if I'll ask Coral if we have any audience members coming in with questions. One question to every one of you, one at a time. Why are there just two men in the anthology? Did you think, Sita or Deepa? Do you think, that's a choice that Rinki and Maithili made? But do you think there's a case for more representation of men talking about their mothers? And
I
do we
think they
see?
could have been. I think they could have been, because this whole mother son thing is carries on from history and mythology and society. This whole so I think we could have had maybe a few more men writing about, if not about their mothers, then their idea of motherhood. Their idea of ideal or not ideal, as the case may be, of motherhood. So I think I would have liked to see a couple of more men writing about.
Sita, your
Um,
take?
I would probably like to see fathers writing about their daughters. And this may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway, that the Indian men fetish for their mothers, no, I don't think we need stories there. So, men writing about their daughters and writing about their daughters in contemporary times, not what your expectation of daughters were back in the day, but put your daughters here and now and see what you're writing. Especially now, we have a very large diaspora population, and America having the Roe v. Wade overturned and the abortion rights for women overturned, I would like to see a lot of men writing about their grown up daughters and their daughters who are mothers. So,
Maithili, Rinki, if you could come in on this. The
Yeah, Maithili?
I Okay, I'll. It's just that we had so many articles by the time we said, I was said we must have, I felt we must need a male voice in this. And I said, I'd read Said's piece, letter to my democratic mother. And I asked him, I said, will you write? He says he was too busy. I think he was writing, and then he was also wanting to make a documentary. He says, take anything you want from my book. So, and I found that I loved his style. He's fond but not sentimental. And he's got a wry sense of objectivity. He writes about his mother, the way the mother took off her burqa after a screening at Eros. I think, and he says it was the quietest revolution ever. It is 1938, and his parents were newly married and they had come to Bombay. And then he says there were a couple about town. And then after the film, when she was putting on her burqa in the foyer, her father says, Begum, do you really want to wear it? And she just looked for a minute and then, okay, she shook her head and then just wrapped the burqa on her arm and they walked back home. And he says, she wore a burqa from the time she was 13. And he goes on to say that she was a devout Muslim and maybe she even prayed 5 times a day. But this was the quietest revolution that should have been headline news. But then it was like, it was buried and kept quiet in that rented apartment in Kuf Parade. If I had the time, I would have read it, but that's a wonderful piece. And then he builds up his mother's pragmatic, hands-on kind of a mother. When the family was like, in financial need, she made velvet bags and sold it to the Army and Navy store until the school fees was collected for the children. And so these kind of things. And that book is where you can't classify the book as fiction and memoir and political thought. And he writes this. And then he also ends that thing. He didn't even have time to write a self-portrait. We use the letter that he has written to his mother, with which the book starts. He says he's writing to his mother after she's dead. And then when he passes by her photograph in his house, he just says, Salam alaikum, Ammi. Then he seems to hear a whispered voice saying, Walaikum salam, Sadhu. And he says, how can I, a rationalist, feel that there is somebody speaking to me? I mean, it's like a puzzlement for him, that he could be feeling his mother long after she was gone. And this was his letter to her, because she was very interested in current affairs. Rest of the book is all about political events and all that. So it was a fascinating book. And I was ill at the time. So Jennifer sent me the book, and I think I finished it in about 4 days, because it was made such absorbing reading, and we selected it from there. So I wish we had, other than Amit Chaudhary, Rinki got his poem for this readily, and they make a companion piece, Vaidehi's poem and Amit Chaudhary's poem. But I wish if we had more time, and already we had so many essays. There was nothing that we could say, oh, we'll drop this and get a male voice. And somehow I have a feeling that Indian men are not capable of being objective about their mothers. I think there is that whole thing that there is this all giving, all loving, all, that what do you call that? Unconditional love they expect from their mothers. So I think if she falls from that pedestal, you don't know what their reaction would be. That would be something interesting to find out. But
Yeah,
if you're
maybe
going to a second
we can
edition of
address
book,
that in a subsequent edition of the book.
Yes, yeah.
If we can actually come up with voices that go against the mother, that go contrary to the Mother India sort of
Yeah.
concept of mothers that men have, so that
In
would be
Shantanu,
one last question.
if I may
Yes,
add
please,
something, that
please.
the qualities we expect from a mother, or the duties that we expect from a mother, in many cases are fulfilled by the father. So I would really like to read from a father who brings up the child like a mother. And when I say mother, I'm using it in a loose term. You expect the mother will cook for the child, look after the child when he or she is sick, do whatever needs to be done to keep them emotionally and physically, mentally happy. What in cases of the father doing all that, the father doing the mothering? I would like to read about that.
Can I
Wonderful
add
idea.
something?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, it.
So, my favorite saying, which is quite contrary to what I said, is "Mere paas maa hai,"
Ma
right?
hai.
But thank you, Maithili, for backing up what I said.
Hmm.
Rinki, one last question
Sure.
about the cover of the book. Just
So,
get me.
I feel I am so privileged. Uh, Jamini Roy's grandson happened to have read my earlier book, Janani, the earlier book, which came out by Sage. And we just connected through a friend of mine. And when we were working out this book at the time, the collection, so I just happened to tell him, I said, I love Jamini Rai's paintings. And of course, he is known for his mother and child images. They're like absolutely, I haven't seen anything better. I mean, he's absolutely brilliant in his portrayal of the mother and child. So he said, okay, I will give you anything you want for your cover. I just grabbed that. I said, of course. And they sent us something which was very, very typical Jamini Rai, which we sort of put aside. And this is a very unusual Jamini Rai portrait. This is much more, I would say the French impressionist kind of, painting. You cannot, cannot see it exactly as a Jamini Rai painting, but it is his. And I was just completely over the moon. I said, okay, this is the perfect cover. I mean, if you've seen my earlier books also, I'm very particular about the covers. Most of the covers, it is so important to have wonderful covers. It makes it, lends the book its true value, I would say. So I am over the moon with this cover, and it's not a question, Shantanu, of having men write. Said's fitted in with our theme very much. So, and also I had hoped that Amit would write about his mother, who was an exceptional woman, and he adored her, but somehow he just gave us this little poem which I was happy to carry. I think that's a separate volume altogether.
Yes,
Fathers writing about their daughters or their parenting and fathering should be definitely considered. I think we can consider that, or somebody else can consider that. Hmm? Till then
thank you
we
so
have.
much, Rinki. I think with that, it's been wide. It's already been an hour that we have been talking. It didn't feel like that. Sauravi, we are all yours at the from now on. Like Maithili, Rinki, thank you once again.
Thank
Sita
you, thank
and
you.
Deepa,
Thank
thank you
you.
for your contribution. Just spread the word. Ask everyone to sort of buy the copy. I think it's a brilliant book. It's a novel concept, and I think everybody must has to read this. So just spread the word. Thank you, all of you, again, and Saurabhi and Koral. Thank you so much,
Yes,
TMYS.
thank you for having us on this platform. It's wonderful, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'll
Thank
see
you.
all of you hopefully in on
Thank
2nd of
you
June
again.
in Bombay. Saurabhi, over to you.
Yes.
Right. That was wonderful. Thank you once again to Ms. Bhattacharya, Ms. Galot, Ms. Bhaskar, and Ms. Rao for your time this evening. And a big thank you to Mr. Chaudhury for leading the conversation. Do check out the book if you haven't already, to all the viewers. With this, we come to an end of the 14th episode titled The Oldest Love Story, a Motherhood Anthology book launch under Stories of India, brought to you by www.tellyourstory.biz. Just a reminder, registrations are now open for the writing program season 6, the last date for registration being 15 May 2022. The next episode of the Stories of India season 3 will feature Professor Devnath Pathak speaking on another India in the literary modernity of Mithila. Till then, stay well, stay safe, stay happy. Good night.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Thank you.